My name is Jari, last name Gandry, and it's silent. So today I'll be presenting about Puppeteer. And essentially what we'll be doing is using Puppeteer, um, a technology developed by Google to build a meme creator, right? So a little bit about me. Um, I was born in Douala, Cameroon, moved to Minnesota, and now I'm in Boston. I've been in Boston for almost a decade now. Some of my hobbies include basketball, music, sleeping, chess, counting, YouTube, photography. The odd one there is counting. What I mean by that is I've been counting license plate, adding numbers on license plate numbers in Massachusetts for about 4 years now. And the highest sum I've seen is 33. So if you can beat that, let me know. Um, that's great. So a little overview about what we'll be doing today. So it's very light. The main chunk here is going to be the live demo. Um, so we'll talk briefly about Puppeteer, um, what the technology is used for, what it's intended for, how you can use it, what the needs to know before you use it. Then we'll dive into the implementation I prepared for this presentation, which is MemeTube. And that will lead us into a demo where we'll grow that application a little bit. So Puppeteer. So Puppeteer is a web scraper developed by Google. What it relies on is headless Chrome. So what headless Chrome is, it's a way to have a browser without having the UI. What that means is you can control the browser using programming languages, CLI, basically anything besides a click and point type interaction with a user. Now, headless Chrome is a little bit intensive to set up and use. So what Google did is they developed Puppeteer. And what Puppeteer does, it sets up headless Chrome for you. So when you install Puppeteer, you actually um, download a headless Chrome. You actually download a browser in the background. So one thing we might experience while I'm presenting the live version of this demo is I might break off my connection just because Puppeteer is that intensive when it's running. It's actually a full browser running in the background. Um, and then besides that, what you can do is you can automate tasks, like anything you can do, scroll, click, navigate, open a new page, that all can be done using Puppeteer. How easy is it to set up? If you're familiar with NPM, that is the Node Package Manager. It's very simple. It's just NPM I. The I stands for install, and that installs it. And then just open up a script, import Puppeteer, and you're all set to go. From there, there's methods on the Puppeteer library to puppeteer.open a browser. And then that's it. You have a browser running, navigate to a page, you can click, that stuff. So it's pretty simple. Right. So for today, our implementation is MemeTube. So the way MemeTube, the goal for MemeTube was to create memes essentially. But how the memes are created is you give it a YouTube URL, and what it does, it visits the page, loads it up, and then parses some of the content on the page. That includes the title, the duration of the video, some of the comments, and just a couple of the selectors. And then it takes screenshots at random timestamps, selects some of the top comments, and then combines those into a meme. So the three major components here are that we're going to interact with are the React client, the React client. That's the first one. So that's the UI we're going to use to kind of view our images, view the frames that were selected from the video, view the comments that were parsed. The next one is an Express app, that's Puppeteer itself. So that's going to be running in the background as a service, and we're going to be making requests. And it's been built in with all to fetch and scrape exactly what we need. And lastly, the third thing we're going to be running in the background is a Flask app. So the point of the Flask app is to combine the data that is collected from Puppeteer. So this is the basically the flow of data. The user uses the client, enters a YouTube URL. The client sends a request to Puppeteer that fetches the data. The data gets sent back to the client, and then the client then again sends a request to the Flask app to combine the data into memes at a high level. So before we turn over to how to use the exact implementation we're going to visit today, I wanted to kind of get some things to clarify some things up front. Scraping the internet is not completely legal. Actually, in most cases, it's illegal. So a couple of things you need to know before you start using Puppeteer. Definitely get familiar with the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. That kind of highlights most cases where you would find yourself breaking the law. Then again, this is shaky ground. There's not a clear line for this, but definitely anything you violate in that act, you're violating the law. Terms of service, different websites have the terms of service. So again, explore that before scraping the website. Excuse me. And oh, definitely missed that. And then an API versus a crawler. That most enterprise companies like Google and Stripe and different things like that have an API. So it's not necessary to kind of scrape the website. You can use the API whenever that's available. That's definitely recommended. There is some functionalities you can use with a crawler that you can't with the API. And lastly is the crawl rate. So when you've met all the conditions and you're definitely in the clear ground to use your crawler, one thing you need to be careful about is a crawler can spam a website and crash some of your services. That is also legal grounds to get sued and other things like that. So just definitely be careful before you start using this or other crawlers you might encounter. Okay. So one thing also that you want to visit is, in this case, we'll be using YouTube. Most websites have a robots.txt page. And right here, we're looking at the YouTube version of this. And what it does, it outlines every single endpoint that you're not allowed to scrape with a bot. So in this case, we'll be using the watch endpoint that is not on this list. Did a couple other checks in terms of terms and services. I am not going to be profiting off this, so that's also a grounds for making this okay. So yeah, we are a bot and we do pass the CAPTCHA this time. So with that being said, we're going to turn over to our live demo, which will be the majority of this presentation. Here we go. So here it is. Right here, we are looking at our client. Very simple. Like I said, this is a minimal React app. And right now it's waiting for a YouTube URL. So I had one prepared. Just pause the video if you don't mind. And we're going to feed that. It's set up to not to fail on bad YouTube URL. So there's a little bit of validation going on there, not too much. So once I click meme, so what this is doing right now in the background, which you can't see, and I'm going to pull up on your screen in a second, is this is what's running in the background. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, awesome. What you're seeing here is the Puppeteer running. So it's loading the YouTube page. It's trying to play it. It's going to scrape some stuff, and that's going to render. On the bottom left here, what you're seeing as the front end, that's our client. On the right side over here, what you're seeing is the Flask app, which is in charge of combining the data into a meme. So I think this should be done in any second now. Okay. So once this is completed, that's going to navigate to the next page where we select what memes we want to use and what captions we want to use. Awesome. So that was generated. So as you can take a look at, so choose a comment that this just corresponds to the comments that were on the web page. So we can plan one, get a monkey. Let's just double check that. Okay, so that corresponds to this comment right here. And we can choose another comment. And the number you see right next to it corresponds to the amount of likes the comment had. So just added that in to kind of give us eyes on that. Zanu, that's that comment. Awesome, great. So for the first run, I only generated one image. We'll do another run that generates multiple image. It just takes a little bit longer, but I just wanted to get us to one run and then we can iterate from there. All right, so meme, that's it. So we chose the image, we chose the caption, and we can go back and try to choose another caption. Have I done this correctly? Okay, so what is happening is I need to reload the page because my Redux state needs some refreshing. So we're gonna kick that off again. So while that is running, what I'm going to do now is switch over to the code base and we'll have a chance to talk through how this is all happening in the background. Awesome. Great. We'll digest this chunk by chunk. Nothing too much. So as you see here are 3 clients we mentioned earlier. So that's Puppeteer, that's responsible for scraping, the collage, that's responsible for combining, and the client, and that's responsible for just rendering the client you just saw. We just took a look at the client, so I think it's a good idea to start off with that. So I hope everyone is familiar with React. If not, that's also okay. It's definitely intuitive in terms of web building capabilities. So in React, there's 2 types of components. If you want to, so React is built based on components. There are 2 types of components. One type is a stateless component, and another type is a stateful component. So if you hear component, those are the 2 types you want to think about. And a stateless component is a component that just renders. You kind of want to break up your components in this state. It makes it easier to manage and debug. So just render stuff. So this is what you will find in this component section right here. This is how I broke it up. So this is just takes care of rendering. You pass it data and it will just display. And in the case of our app, excuse me, I just lost it. Google Slides, there we go. So in the case of our app, the search bar is a component. This frame right here is a component, and the comment section is a component. So if we go back to that, excuse me, right here, that's what you'll see. The frame corresponds to the image. The meme, that's what you see after that has been generated. And then there's a search bar, and then there's a comment section. Awesome. And then for each component, we'll just take a look at it. Not too much happening. Excuse me if this is a little new to you. So what we have is, this is the comment component. The main thing here that you will see on the UI is this portion right here. And that is the comments and the votes. So for each comment, there's a vote, there's a text, and I call it vote, but this corresponds to the number of likes it had. So that's what you're looking at whenever you click next, next, next. That's the main thing. And then there's some logic to kind of switch back and forth between the indexes, raise or reduce, but that's it. Similar to the image you see whenever that's rendered, there's a image component, that's the main thing. And then you have some buttons to the left, some buttons to the right, and that just navigates back and forth between the different buttons. That's the main thing. And then we have a search component. That's the top thing you see. Again, very simple. Input button. You give it some input, it stores it, and then there's a button to render it. Okay, so those are our main components. And then our page has 3 pages. So our page has 3 connected components in this case. So this, again, we're still within the UI. Those were the building blocks of our UI. Now this is the actual connected components that takes us from one page to another page. So there's the landing page. This is when you're looking at a React component, what you want to focus on, the starting point you want to look at is the return of the function. That kind of lets you know what you expect on the screen. And then the rest of the logic is kind of used to maintain that. So in this case, you just see the search component we covered earlier. So that search component up top, that's, again, managed by the landing page. Even if you want to search a new object, that's again managed by the landing page. So that just updates all the other components. And the results component. So after you search something, the results from that search gets stored in our Redux in what's called a store for a React app. And then that gets propagated through all the rest of the components. So in this case, we have our frame, our comment, and now at the end to meme the actual object. So, and this corresponds to this page. Search, frame, comment. This is the page you're looking at. And then lastly, it's our congrats page. Again, simple. This is just a meme. And what the meme component is, didn't get a chance to look into this. So in the meme component, this is after everything has been rendered, so there's no need to navigate. So this is strictly just the image and some divs to kind of render and style the whole process. So if we go back to the congrats, that's that. And if we click on congrats, again, this is just a new, so our Redux store was refreshed and we had a new caption. So that's what you see rendered. Great. So that covers our client. We can move on to Puppeteer. I think this is the meetup. Actually, we'll keep Puppeteer for last. I think that's the most involved portion of this. So this is the service that combines the collage. This is the service that combines the images and the comments into a meme. One thing you might be wondering is, where are the images stored? That's stored on S3. That's an AWS, Amazon Web Service. And that's run by Amazon Web Services. So that's stored on S3, and each of the different services, being the client, the collage, and the Puppeteer, all have access to it. And that's how they all share the same information. And the comments are just passed as HTTP requests, but the images are stored on S3 and the links to the images are passed around. So we'll dive into the collage. Here, let's start with the entry point. That's some tests, we don't need to look at that. So this is the entry point. This is very simple. It does one thing, it creates a meme. That's the only endpoint on here. And what it expects in order to create a meme is, so the V tag corresponds to this right here. This is a unique identifier for every YouTube video. So you will see this identifier a lot throughout the code base. That's what that points to. Similarly, you'll see a timestamp. And what a timestamp is when the Puppeteer originally parses the video, it will get the timestamp as hours, minutes, seconds. That all gets converted to seconds and then randomized. And then we pick a random timestamp, jump to the timestamp, take a screenshot, and that screenshot corresponds to the frame we're going to be using for the meme. So that's what this is pointing to. And then additionally, we have the feature to put the meme at the bottom or the top of the page. So if you look at this meme right here, that's at the top of the page. So there's functionality to move it to the bottom. That's added there. And beyond that, that calls a high-level meme class that takes care of combining the artifacts and then cleaning it because it does download it from S3, stores it locally, combines it, and then pushes it back locally, pushes it back to S3. So there's some method there to clean up my local system. So we'll dive in exactly into the method itself and what it does. How are we doing on time? Great. So I'll pick up a little bit of pace. At a high level, the way this combines, this is the main method in this. So again, you'll see download from S3. So it goes through and it fetches the images. Once it's fetched the images, it combines, once it's fetched the image, it takes the image and adds the comment to it. And then lastly, it re-uploads it. And then each of those returns a Boolean. So I just AND all of them just to make sure everything went through successfully. And each of these are stored in a util file. So we can quickly glance at this. I think this is getting a little detailed, but meme to comment, this is achieved using Pillow. If you might be interested in this, Pillow is a library on Python that allows you to render an image right on top of an image, overlap images. You can basically do color images and do all kinds of things with it. So this is how this is achieved here. So the image is loaded. We support, this also supports multiple captions, but it does default to, it supports multiple fonts. So you see there's a SpongeBob font for a little bit of animation caption, and then there's an impact. It defaults to the impact font. As you'll see, where is that font? It does default to the impact. Let's leave it at that. Lastly, compose background. So you'll see the meme is written on top of this. The screenshot actually goes from this height to that height. So there's an option to change the color of this background. That defaults to white for now, but you can pass in a parameter on the request to change that as well. And you can also change the color of the text and the font of the text. And the rest of the methods just interact with S3 and does all that great stuff. So lastly, this is why the presentation was made, is Puppeteer. So how easy is it to work with Puppeteer? Great. So this is our node service. And this is where all the requests come in. Now, one thing to note, one thing I want to show here is browser. This is what I'm looking for. Okay. So once the request comes in, we create a new browser for every request. Again, this is why this application is not deployed, because like I said, Puppeteer is very expensive to run. So if you were to pay for resources to run this, you definitely run out of money real fast. But this is the initial point. Once this comes in, again, because it was so expensive, I added some metrics to kind of track how much resources it was using. We're not going to look into that. And then we have some endpoints to fetch. Clip corresponds to a frame. Comment corresponds to, again, the comment section endpoint. And then meme corresponds to a combination of comments and getting the images. So that can be done at the same time. That's what that endpoint is there. And we'll dive into this, the actions section of this. So each of the endpoints calls one action in here to kind of get its job done. So we'll dive straight to this. Here on the top, at the start of the file, what you see are some of the utilities. Again, these are utilities that help us achieve a task, not too important. But what's more important here is you see a bunch of selectors. What the selectors correspond to is whenever you go on a YouTube page and you click inspect on Google Chrome, excuse me. So that's right click inspect, and you find yourself a selector, say this. Oh, excuse me. Okay, that got us on that. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Awesome. So this selector tells us how to find the title of the video. So what I did is I went through all the selectors for YouTube and picked out the ones I was interested in, and hard coded all of those in a constant file. So that's what you'll see. YTD actions button, vote, that corresponds probably to the like button. Skip ad button. When I'm trying to take a screenshot, sometimes the Puppeteer might have to watch an ad. So I have to kind of stay there and loop and skip the ad, all that kind of thing. So that's all taken care of there. Next thing we want to look at is how easy is it to kind of run this and fetch a video. So let's get us to the starting point here. Excuse me. Let's find play YouTube. Awesome. Play YouTube. Oh, did not edit it. Play YouTube. Just trying to jump to the definition here. Bear with me. I don't know why I decided to use a new. Okay. Okay, that's. I think that's. Okay, so I'm not able to find that right now. Hold on. So we'll need to. So what the Play YouTube functionality does is it exactly how it's described. This is the entry point for all. So you'll see this happening throughout all the code. So for example, this function is to get a bunch of frames. This other one is to get a frame at a specific timestamp. This one is to get any frame. So this is inherited from all the other frames. Get a random comment, get all comments. But each of these have to play the YouTube video. So this is kind of the entry point for all our functions. This file got a bit long. Okay, here it is. Kind of lost track of it. Great. So how do you play a YouTube video? So when you get the first time you require Puppeteer using the slide I showed earlier, that after you install it, you require it, you can start a new browser, and then from a browser, you can get a page. And from that page, what you can do is go to, and you can navigate to a specific URL. Is that simple? Here, what you'll see is a lot of wait untils, a lot of halts, timeouts, because it's YouTube. You have to watch ads. You have to wait for stuff to load. So it's a little bit intensive, but that's how you navigate using Puppeteer. That's great. So with the remaining time, what I want to try to do is, if you've noticed on this, and I just reloaded. So right now our UI does not get the YouTube creator name. So it does not get the content creator name. It does get the title, but it doesn't get the content creator name. So with the remaining of the time, what I want to do is walk through with you guys how to get the content creator name and have it rendered on our application. Okay. So the UI does take a little more time. So what we'll do as well is we'll focus more on, so I hard-coded some of these endpoints in Postman, and what Postman is, it just helps you send requests. So we'll just use this to test out our endpoints and see if our responses match what we're expecting. That's great. Like as you can see, we're getting the title, timestamps, frames, and some stats about how the request performed. But we're not getting the content creator. So we're going to walk through and do that right now. So in order to do that, so the way we would approach that is, okay, reload the video. First, you want to try to get the selector for that, for the specific, and please let me know if I'm lagging, because I can tell my internet is really slow because Puppeteer is running in the background. So
At Discover, we match all the cash back you've earned at the end.
Okay, this is great. Okay, so first thing we want to do is get the selector for the specific YouTube creator. So what we can do is click on this icon right here, hover. Okay, so we see it has this a.y.t class right here. And let's see, we can get more into information. Okay, so if we see here that we can use the class name yt.channel, I like this. This seems pretty unique. So when you're picking out a selector, what you want to check out is sometimes selectors are repeated for testing purposes internally. So it might be on every div, on every class of views of selector, you might get a bunch of information that's not related to exactly what you want. So in this case, this gets us back exactly what we want. So we'll use the selector. Let's go over to our code base. And in our constant, let's add in a new selector. Content. Like there. All right. This is what we want to use for content creator. And then, so that's a class, jQuery, knowledge classes prefixed with dot. And the actual value is contained in this anchor tag. So what we want to do is something like this. That's great. So that should in fact get us our, so we have the selector we want. So let's export that amongst our other selector. Okay, so now we have the selector. We can go to our actions and import that. And then go back to play YouTube. And we were getting the title right here. No, that's not the one. This thing happens so many places. Let's go. I'm looking for the function definition again. I should just write down what line this happens on. Okay, it would be at the bottom. Advertisement, play YouTube. There it is. Okay, found it. Let's try not to lose it again. So in here, we get the title using that selector we mentioned. So let's do the same thing, and let's get content creator. So this is asynchronous, so we want to use the await keyword in this case. And I think it was content creator selector. Awesome. So that should get us our content creator selector. So we want to verify that this is working, and in fact getting our content creator. So let's briefly do that. Once we know that's working, we can zoom on to the rest of it. And how much time do we have? 10 minutes. Okay. Awesome. Content creator selector. Content creator. Okay, let's quickly log that and see that it's working. Great. So we'll send a request using the comments endpoint, I think that's a lot less, that's a lot faster than the actual, this is what the response for the comments endpoint looks like. Just a bunch of text and how many people upvoted it. We're not going to return the content creator yet, but we just want to, the request will run the play YouTube function, which would eventually fetch the content creator. So if this runs appropriately, we can see it. The latest run. Okay, so we just made a request to fetch all. There was one tab created when it started. Okay, this is the time the request came in. So it's going to get the timeout, the duration, how many tabs were created for the request, and a couple other metrics. Okay, so we see content creator Luis Fonsi. So this is because it's different from the link we're looking at, but that's just because the Postman, what is this called? So that's because the Postman URL we sent it with is a little different, but we have gotten the content creator. So it would apply if we were to change the URL in any case. So that's great, we're getting that. So what we wanna do now with this content creator is we wanna get this all the way from our Puppeteer to our UI. And the goal is to render it. We don't have a good example. Let's just see if we can skip to results. That's great. This doesn't have anything because we haven't searched for anything, but it usually has a title right here, and we want to render it right next to the title. So that's the goal. So now instead of returning the title, let's return an object that has both the title and the content creator name, right? So now everywhere this YouTube method is used, we have to update that. We're not just returning the title anymore. That's going to be fun. So that's no longer the title. Naming is the best part. Let's call it creator info. Let's just call it that. And instead of returning just title now, we're returning creator info. And we have to do this everywhere we were using the title. So let's go ahead and I just copied that name for consistency's sake. So instead of returning the title, we're now returning creator info. So we could avoid some of these just because we're not making a request to every single one. But sometimes, so this is what parses all the comments and also does some sorting based on the amount of likes. Great. Creator info, I think we've gotten everything. Creator info looks, and then that's just a function definition. That's awesome. Okay, so we have the creator info. So now let's find us an endpoint that was getting the title. And now we should see creator info and not just title. So let's check this out. Okay. Just made a request. Excuse me. Let's just see how this is going. Great, loading the video, playing YouTube. It's all great. Okay, great, the response came through. Awesome. Now, instead of just the title, we have the content creator info and the content creator. So awesome. Next, what we want to do is now, so this, if our front end UI makes a request to this endpoint, it's going to get the right information now. So basically now we want to go back in our code base and we're done with Puppeteer. This is sending back the right info. Now we want to go back to our client and make sure this renders the right info. So I have one method that handles all the Puppeteer stuff. So that is the Puppeteer handler. Very simple. It has a couple methods. One to get the meme, that is the collage combining everything. Another one to get the data from searching, and that is spread out in two promises. One to get the actual frames and one to get the comments. Again, I think we can get the content, we can get the creator info out of the comments. So that sounds good. I like that idea. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me just double check what the name was again, content creator. Let's add that for consistency's sake. So first thing we want to do is improve our reducer. Now that we're doing this, let's go ahead and let our reducer know we have to maintain a new state called content creator. Great. Awesome. And then we have to pick an action on which we want to render, we want to populate this content. So what a reducer does is it's a store for our entire application. That maintains the state of our application. You can have multiple stores, but in this case, we only have one. And these are all we need to kind of maintain the state of our application. What the v tag is, the title, the content creator, URLs, what the frames are, which you can click next, comments, you can click next, and then the meme URL, which is what, after you've picked your frames, the comments, this is what gets generated. So that's what gets rendered. So in this case, I think we should populate it on Puppeteer success, meaning Puppeteer returned successfully. So this is here where we'll do that. We'll say content creator. Go ahead and we'll pass it on our action, and we'll say get the content creator of this action. Oh, I'm not looking on time, 2 minutes. Great. Oh, that's supposed to be a comment, not a semicolon. Awesome. So we have our Redux store now is aware we have this new state to maintain. Now we want to know when to kind of dispatch it. So where we do that is in one of our connected components that's in charge of dispatching. First of all, let's update the action itself. So we do have the action YouTube Puppeteer on success. That just takes the v tag, the title, the frames. Basically, after scraping correctly, this is what is returned. And now we have this new property that is also returned called the content creator. So this is basically saying the Redux store, this is where the Redux store is going to get the property from. Okay, that's the dispatch. Now what we want to go to is the actual UI component that is in charge of getting this, and also letting that know that it has a new component to worry about, and that is here. So, oh no, that's the wrong one. Landing, where we do our searching. This is here. So this is the landing component that only has a search. As part of the search, we have set the search results as our dispatch. Excuse me if I'm jumping around too much for you to follow. So as part of that request, we're going to set the content creator. Great. I just want to make sure it was the second argument and not the first. Reducer, actions, v tag, content creator. So it is the third argument, okay, not the second. And if we go back to our landing, so false, data v tag, content creator. So it is the third argument, not the second. Great. And we also got to let here know that we have that. Also let that know that we have that. Great. So that's all going well. So meaning if we send the correct request and we get the correct results, we're going to populate it correctly. But what we're not doing yet is getting the correct results. And that is because in our Puppeteer handler, we're now getting new information. We're not just getting this is the results, this is the response from the request. Originally, we're just getting the timestamp, the time frame, and the v tag title, but now we have more information. So let's go ahead and populate that as well. So
Jare,
Yes.
We're at 12:46, but you can keep going because nobody's using this room later. However,
Okay.
people may need to leave, so there may be questions. I see one is code available on GitHub?
I can definitely make this available. I just wasn't sure anyone was interested. I can make this available after this. I have
Okay.
my contact information. Maybe I should jump to that slide now.
So one place you could do that is put it in the comments on the YouTube video when we put it up there. That would be one thing we could do.
Okay.
And why don't we tell people we'll do that? And
Okay.
then Tariq, you had another question. Did you want to ask that?
Go ahead.
You can unmute yourself, Tariq, if you want to ask it, or I can just say it from the chat.
Yeah. So I think I perhaps didn't get that. So from the YouTube video, how do you get the meme? I thought you would just get a snapshot from the YouTube video. Like I saw Grammarly. I thought that would be somehow you would make a meme out of that. So how do you get the meme from the YouTube video? I think I didn't get that part.
I see. Okay. So the way I get the meme from the YouTube video is, do you understand how I get the image from the YouTube video?
No, I think I didn't. That's what I couldn't get that.
Okay, I see. Let's I apologize for that. I think that's
Jari, if you have to keep going so it doesn't mess you up, you could keep going and answer that later, and it will be part of the recording. So Tariq could see it on the recording if nothing else.
okay. Yeah,
Or
Tariq, I can quickly talk about it as I'm answering, as I'm coding here. So the way we get that is using a screenshot. So once the video is loaded, one of my slides on there was that Puppeteer allows you to take screenshots. So once the video is loaded, you can set the exact size of the screenshot, and then I just size in onto the image itself and the timestamp, and I take a screenshot and I save it to S3. So that's how that's happening. So again, now we're going back to our UI. Like we said, we just got the creator content, and we're looking to get it back from the backend. This is what this portion is. So our response, excuse the nested data. That was a naming error on my side. But data. So this is our creator content. This was our v tag. So if you go by to, that's our v tag. That's our creator info. Now it's no longer just title. It's creator info dot title. So we have that. And lastly, we want to get creator info dot content creator and send that out as well. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Creator. Oh no, it's content creator, right? It is. Okay. That's great. And similarly, okay, .info and .content creator. Cool. So with this, when we send a request, we're going to be pulling off the right objects. Let's just go ahead and make sure one more thing. So this request is coming off the frames endpoint. But what we did test with was the comments endpoint. We did not run the frames endpoint, excuse me, the frames endpoint. So the frame endpoint looks like it's still outdated. So I'm running it in the background just to make sure it picks up the new values. So when we run this in the front end, we don't have any errors. Okay, so that's happening for that. Let's go ahead and similarly update the comments data. Oh, excuse me. We don't need it in both places. It's enough to just render it from one place and populate our store with it. Doesn't make that much a difference. The idea behind this was if a request failed, we will still get the information from the one that succeeded. But yeah, that's why we're going with this approach. So go ahead and paste that. Great. So when we return this, so when the request happens and we return the request, this goes to Remember, we have non-connected components that's just in charge of rendering, but we have connected components that's in charge of interacting with the clients, meaning the different services, and also keeping track of what's happening in the store. So when the request happens, the results page is in charge of, the landings page that's in charge of doing the search is in charge of updating all the store and all the other components that this new data was populated. So we do call the get results data here, and then we pass in this endpoint. Cool. Oh, that's great. Let's just have a look at what happened here. Oh, excuse me. Timeout exceeded. Okay. Timeout exceeded. Oh, I requested 6. Okay. I requested 6 while I'm on a Zoom call and I'm running all of this at the same time. That's why it exceeded. Let's just do 1. Again, Puppeteer is really extensive, so be careful when you run it on your personal machine. So I'm just going to request one image and not 6. Great. So that's being populated. So I think we're good to go. What we can do now is go here and make a request, but let's not render everything yet and just have a look at what our data looks like. Okay, so this is what is in charge of rendering the results. Let's pause on that. And instead just console.log data on the front end and see what that looks like and make sure we're getting everything correctly. So we'll need a correct URL again. Oh, I didn't copy correctly. That did. Great. Let's do it from the home page. Okay, and let's have a look for what this beautiful thing says. And we expect the comment to come from, so we see comment from the handler, but I believe we expect the comment to come from the landing page, line 23. Landing, oh, is it line 23? It is landing line 23, but that looks like line 16. What's on line 16? Okay, we're also logging the props. Let's not do that. Okay, let's have another go. Okay. Okay, now we made the request and it looks like we got some data. No, that just corresponds to not the data we're looking for. So get request URL. That's great. That goes to the results data. That goes right here, and we do make the request. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, now we go back to the front end. And that is still running in the background. Now let's just check on our Puppeteer service and make sure that's running. Okay, that is running. That's why we haven't gotten a response yet. Excuse me. Okay, and this timeout again with 1 request. So I'm running this in many places at the moment. So I'm going to pause on this and assume this is working. I think it's just the amount of requests I'm making and Puppeteer just running at such an insane rate. But let's watch this request come to a conclusion. And it did. Awesome. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, my machine is hitting its max capacity. Oh, that's not a YouTube URL. Let's wrap this up. Okay, data. That's coming from that. Puppeteer line 975. Awesome. Let's see what's on 75. That's just that. Don't want that. Okay. So right now we are looking to make a request, which is not going to the backend, and I'm wondering if I commented something out that did offset that. So let me just go ahead and uncomment everything I did here. 1 second. Let's go ahead and make the full-fledged request one time, and it might fail gracefully or not. Let's see how that's handled. Okay. Request data URL. That's what we want. And this is still running. Okay, so the request is kicking off right now. I think I'm just being a little bit impatient. I might have kicked off a few too many just by being impatient, because I see a bunch of these running, and that's coming from the front end request. So we might have to sit by and wait for these to die out. In fact, I'm just going to kill the service. It's been running for, as you can see, 2 hours, which is a stress. So let's just kill it and restart it.
Jari, it probably is time to wrap things up now. So I don't know if you want to say any closing words about where people might go to find out more about this, or.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate everyone attending. So let me go back to my slides. Okay. Yeah, so I recommend checking out Puppeteer. I think it's a great opportunity to automate a lot of tasks, and you can customize whatever you want. Commonly, web scraping is used in enterprise for testing purposes, to kind of test the workflow of an application. And then there are bad actors that use it for other things that are not so legal. But you can just have fun with it and build anything you want. If you have any questions specifically, I think we're out of time, so I can't take them now. But definitely feel free to reach out to me. This is my email. You can reach out personally. I'll clean up the code and I'll definitely share with you, and we can talk about or anything else, any other questions you have, and I'll be willing to answer it. Thank you for attending. And I apologize for going over the time, but thank you for staying, for those who stay.
No problem.